The stars looked peaceful from Admiral Tae-min's command deck. He stood watching the vast emptiness of space through the windows of Station Gyeongbok, humanity's farthest outpost. The station floated silently at the edge of human territory, far from Earth's warm glow. For 300 years, humans had been slowly moving outward, building colonies on Mars and Europa, setting up mining operations on distant asteroids. To anyone watching, they looked like a young race just learning to walk among the stars. Tae-min's peaceful moment ended when the sensors started screaming. His communications officer, Lieutenant Bo-ra, looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, we're detecting multiple unknown contacts approaching our position. They're big." The alien ships appeared out of nowhere, sleek and enormous. 12 different designs, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Or at least, that's what they were supposed to think. Tae-min watched the alien vessels move into scanning formation. Their energy signatures were impressive, but not surprising. Humanity had been expecting this day for decades. "Run the standard protocols," Tae-min ordered calmly. "Make sure they see exactly what they expect to see, on the other side of the galaxy." Fleet Commander Vexthar studied the reports from his reconnaissance ships. The data showed exactly what he had hoped. These humans were children playing with toys. Their fastest ships used simple fusion drives that left heat trails across space. Their weapons were basic nuclear missiles and primitive railguns that fired metal slugs. Their defenses were nothing more than energy barriers that any decent plasma cannon could punch through. Vexthar's species, the Corvani, had been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years. They had built the galactic hegemony by crushing 12 different civilizations and forcing them to serve. Now they controlled hundreds of planets and trillions of beings. Adding one more primitive species to their collection would be simple work. The hegemony's war council met in the Great Hall of Nexus Prime, their capital world. Representatives from all 12 ruling species sat around a massive table made from the crystallized remains of their first conquered enemy. Vexthar stood before them, his 4 arms spread wide as he presented the human data. "Look at these readings," he said, his voice carrying the confidence of a predator discussing prey. "Their ships are slow. Their weapons are weak. They have barely left their home system. We have fleets that could destroy their entire civilization in a matter of days." The council members looked at the human technology reports and nodded. General Krixta of the Zephyrian Empire tapped her claws on the crystal table. "Their energy output is pathetic. Our smallest frigates generate more power than their largest battleships." High Admiral Nexmore of the Stellar Dominion leaned forward. "What about their numbers? Quantity sometimes makes up for poor quality." Vexthar's laugh was like grinding metal. "They have maybe 300 ships total. We have over 50,000 vessels in our combined fleets. This won't even qualify as a real war." Back on Earth, President Jin Woo sat in his office beneath the Seoul Command Center. The room looked simple, with basic furniture and old-fashioned paper books on wooden shelves. Anyone scanning the building would detect standard concrete and steel construction, normal electrical systems, and typical human technology. They would never guess that the walls contained quantum processors more advanced than anything in the galaxy, or that Jin Woo's simple wooden desk could coordinate the movements of millions of spacecraft across hundreds of star systems. Defense Minister Yuna entered the office, her face serious. "Sir, the aliens have sent their message. They're demanding our immediate surrender." Jin Woo read the alien ultimatum on his tablet. The words were harsh and demanding, exactly what he had expected. The galactic hegemony wanted humanity to bow down to accept slavery like so many other species had done. They promised to let humans live if they submitted without resistance. If not, they would take what they wanted by force. "Have you contacted our people in the outer systems?" Jin Woo asked. "Admiral Tae-min confirms that Station Gyeongbok is ready. Chief Scientist Dong Hyun reports that all defensive systems are operational. The hidden shipyards are standing by." Jin Woo stood and walked to his window. Seoul stretched out below him, a city of millions going about their daily lives. They had no idea that their entire species was about to be tested in the greatest challenge they had ever faced, but Jin Woo knew something the aliens didn't. Humanity had been preparing for this day since they first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Send our response, Jinwoo said quietly. Tell them they're welcome to try. Light years away, Admiral Taemin received the president's orders. He looked around his bridge at the men and women who served under him. They all knew what was coming. They had trained for this their entire lives, just like their parents and grandparents had trained before them. Activate the deception protocols, Taemin ordered. Make sure our ships look as primitive as possible. I want the aliens to see exactly what they expect to see when they arrive. Lieutenant Bora's fingers moved over her controls. Across human space, advanced warships suddenly appeared on sensors as crude metal boxes held together with bolts and prayers. Weapons systems that could tear holes in reality itself showed up as simple nuclear rockets. Shields that could bend. Space and time looked like basic energy barriers that any child could understand. The greatest trick was the ships themselves. Humanity had learned long ago that the best way to hide something was to put it right in front of your enemy's face. Their real fleet was enormous, thousands of vessels hidden in dimensions that most species didn't even know existed. But to alien sensors, they looked like a few hundred primitive ships, barely capable of reaching the next star system. On Nexus Prime, Vexthar received humanity's response to their ultimatum. 3 words that would change the course of galactic history. Come and try. The alien commander's rage was immediate and terrible. How dare these primitive creatures refuse the generous offer of slavery? How dare they challenge the might of the galactic hegemony? He would show them what happened to species that didn't know their place in the galaxy. Prepare the first assault fleet, Vexthar commanded. 200 ships should be more than enough to crush these insects. We'll make an example of them that every other primitive species will remember. As the alien fleet began moving toward Earth, humanity made its own preparations. In hidden bases scattered across 100 star systems, men and women like Admiral Taemin, Defense Minister Yuna, and Chief Scientist Dong-hyun checked their weapons one last time. They had spent centuries preparing for this moment. Now they would discover if their patience and planning had been enough. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone made the mistake of threatening humanity's home. Admiral Kyung-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the alien fleet approach through the darkness of space. 200 massive ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with weapon ports and shield generators. Each alien vessel was 5 times larger than anything humanity was supposed to possess. Their energy signatures blazed like small suns, announcing their power to anyone who cared to look. The human defense fleet waited for them at the edge of the solar system. 30 small ships, looking like metal boxes compared to the alien giants. Their hulls were rough and simple, showing none of the elegant curves that marked advanced technology. To the alien scanners, they looked like patrol boats facing off against a battle fleet. Captain Haiwan commanded one of those 30 human ships, the Soul's Fury. Her vessel appeared to be nothing more than a converted cargo hauler with weapons, bolted to its sides. The life support systems looked basic, the engines seemed primitive, and the weapons were clearly outdated nuclear missiles that any decent shield could stop. Fleet Commander Vexthar studied the human formation from his command ship, the Dominator. He had brought enough firepower to destroy a dozen civilizations, and these humans had sent 30 garbage scows to stop him. The sight was almost insulting. Open communications, Vexthar ordered. His image appeared on screens throughout both. Fleets, a tall alien with 4 arms and skin like polished metal. Humans, I am Fleet Commander Vexthar of the Galactic Hegemony. You will surrender immediately, or be destroyed. Captain Haiwan's response came back through the communication systems, her voice calm and steady. This is Captain Haiwan of the human ship Soul's Fury. You have entered our space without permission and made threats against our people. This is your only warning. Turn back now. The alien commander's laughter echoed through both fleets. Several of his officers joined in, finding the human response hilarious. A single primitive captain threatening an entire battle fleet? It was. Like an insect threatening to bite an elephant. Human, your species has 30 ships. We have 200. Your weapons are centuries behind ours. Your shields couldn't stop a child's toy. Surrender now, and we might let some of you live as slaves. Haiwan's reply was just as calm as before. We tried to warn you. Vexthar decided that the humans needed to see what real power looked like. All ships, target the human vessels, fire at will. The alien fleet opened up with everything they had: plasma beams that could melt through solid rock, particle cannons that could punch holes in moons, and energy torpedoes that exploded with the force of small stars. The barrage lit up space like a second sun, pouring enough destruction into the human formation to wipe out entire planets. When the light faded, the alien crews expected to see empty space where the human ships had been. Instead, they saw something impossible. The human vessels were still there, completely undamaged. What? Vexithar stared at his sensors in confusion. How are they still alive? His science officer, a nervous creature with too many eyes, checked the readings 3 times before answering. Sir, our weapons passed right through them. The humans we've been targeting aren't real. There's some kind of projection. As if responding to the aliens' discovery, the 30 human ships shimmered and disappeared like mirages in the desert. The aliens found themselves staring at empty space, wondering what had just happened. Then the real human fleet appeared. They came out of nowhere, materializing from dimensions that the aliens didn't know existed. Not 30 ships, but 300. Not small patrol boats, but massive warships that dwarfed even the largest alien vessels. They surrounded the alien fleet in seconds, appearing above, below, and on all sides. Admiral Kyung-ho's voice came over the communication systems, speaking from his real flagship, the Incheon's Wrath. The ship was a kilometer long and bristled, with weapons that the aliens couldn't identify. Welcome to our space, Fleet Commander Vexthar. We hope you enjoy your stay. It's going to be very short. The aliens tried to respond, but their weapons systems wouldn't lock onto the human ships. Every time they tried to target something, their computers told them there was nothing there. The humans had somehow made themselves invisible to alien sensors while remaining perfectly visible to the naked eye. Impossible, Vexithar whispered. Their technology is primitive. We scanned them ourselves. Engineer Sang-min aboard the Incheon's Wrath activated humanity's true weapons. The aliens were about to learn what 300 years of secret preparation could accomplish. Gravity cannons tore the first alien ship apart at the molecular level, creating a tiny black hole that consumed the vessel from the inside out. The aliens watched in horror as their most powerful dreadnought simply collapsed into nothing, imploding so fast that there wasn't even time to scream. Dimensional torpedoes phased through alien shields like they weren't there, appearing inside enemy ships and detonating with enough force to crack planets. The aliens' best defenses were useless against weapons that attacked from directions they couldn't even detect. Quantum jammers turned the aliens' own computers against them. Weapon systems fired on their own ships. Navigation computers sent vessels crashing into each other. The aliens found themselves fighting their own technology, while the humans picked them apart piece by piece. But the most terrifying moment came when alien boarding parties managed to breach Captain Ji-hyun's ship, the Busan Thunder. The aliens expected to find primitive humans with basic weapons and fragile bodies. Instead, they discovered that humanity had spent centuries improving themselves. The human defenders didn't need spacesuits. Their modified bodies could survive in vacuum for hours. When the aliens shot them, they watched in horror as the wounds healed in seconds. When they tried to overpower the humans physically, they found themselves facing beings with the strength of machines and the speed of lightning. Captain Ji-hyun herself stood at the center of the battle, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge alien weapons, while her modified muscles let her throw attackers across the room like children. She had improved her brain as well, processing information so fast that the battle seemed to move in slow motion. "Did you really think," she said to the surviving aliens, "that we would spend 3 centuries in space without learning how to survive here?" The first alien boarding party was wiped out in minutes. The second never made it past the airlock. The third decided that retreating was a much better idea than advancing. Across the battle zone, the story was the same. The aliens had brought medieval swords to fight against opponents with nuclear weapons. Their technology, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was useless against an enemy that had been preparing for this exact fight for 300 years. In less than an hour, the alien fleet was destroyed. Ships that had seemed invincible were now floating wreckage. Crews that had conquered civilizations were either dead or running for their lives. The mighty galactic hegemony had just learned that there were things in the universe more dangerous than they were. Fleet Commander Vexithar found himself aboard the only surviving alien ship, a small scout vessel that had been too fast for the humans to catch. His mighty fleet was gone. His reputation was ruined. His entire understanding of the universe had been turned upside down. How? He whispered to himself as his ship fled toward home. How did we get it so wrong? Admiral Kyung-ho watched the alien survivor disappear into faster-than-light travel. He had let the ship escape on purpose. Someone needed to carry the news back to the galactic hegemony. Someone needed to tell them that their easy conquest had just become their worst nightmare. "Send a message to Earth," Kyung-ho ordered. "Tell President Jin-woo that the first test is complete. Let him know we're ready for whatever comes next." The message traveled faster than light, reaching Earth in seconds. President Jin-woo read it in his office beneath Seoul, surrounded by technology that the aliens still couldn't imagine. He smiled for the first time in months. The galaxy thought it could breach Earth's frontiers. They had been wrong about that. But this was just the beginning. When the aliens returned, they would bring everything they had, and humanity would be ready for them. The news hit Nexus Prime like a bomb. Fleet Commander Vexthar's ship limped into port 3 days after the battle, carrying impossible reports of total defeat. 200 of the hegemony's finest ships destroyed by a primitive human fleet. Advanced alien technology made useless by weapons that shouldn't exist. An entire battle group wiped out in less than an hour. High Counselor Zephyra listened to Vexthar's report in the Great Hall of the Hegemony Council. The surviving commander stood before the 12 ruling species, his 4 arms shaking as he described the human attack. His voice cracked when he talked about ships being torn apart by tiny black holes, about weapons that attacked from other dimensions, about humans who could survive in the vacuum of space. "Impossible," declared General Krixta, her claws scraping against the crystal table. "No species develops that kind of technology without us knowing about it. We've been watching the humans for 3 centuries. They're primitives." Vexithar's response came out as a whisper. "That's what they wanted us to think." The silence that followed lasted for long minutes. 12 different species, rulers of hundreds of worlds, all trying to understand how their perfect intelligence system had failed so completely. They had spent thousands of years conquering the galaxy by studying their enemies first, learning their weaknesses, striking when victory was certain. Now they discovered that their greatest target had been studying them in return. Admiral Nexmore slammed his fist on the table. "One battle doesn't mean anything. So the humans have better technology than we thought. So what? We rule 1,000 star systems. We have 50,000 ships. We'll send so many vessels that their fancy weapons won't matter. Numbers will win this war." The other council members nodded. They had built their empire on overwhelming force. When faced with advanced technology, they simply brought more ships than their enemies could handle. It had worked against every other species they had encountered. It would work against the humans, too. Zephyra stood, her massive form casting shadows across the hall. "Send word to every member species. Full military mobilization. I want every ship, every weapon, every soldier we have. The humans want to play games with us? Fine. We'll show them what happens when you challenge the galactic hegemony." On Earth, Dr. Min Young worked in laboratories buried deep beneath Seoul's mountain ranges. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment, just like her parents and grandparents before her. The defeat of the first alien fleet had been expected. The real test was coming now. Her fingers moved across control panels that existed in 12 dimensions simultaneously. Around her, machines that looked like simple computers were actually quantum processors capable of coordinating millions of operations across hundreds of star systems. What the aliens saw as primitive human technology was actually so advanced that most species wouldn't be able to understand it even if someone explained it to them. "Activate the Genesis Project," Min Young ordered. Deep beneath Earth's surface, biological laboratories came online. For 3 centuries, humanity had been preparing weapons that could adapt and evolve faster than any enemy could counter them. The aliens wanted to see what humans were really capable of. They were about to find out. General Wu Jin stood before the United Earth Defense Council, addressing representatives from every human colony in space. Men and women who looked ordinary, but could survive things that would kill most aliens. Leaders, who seemed primitive but commanded technology that could reshape reality itself. "The aliens are coming back," Wu Jin announced. "Our intelligence suggests they're bringing everything they have. 10,000 ships, maybe more. Every weapon in their arsenal. They think they can crush us with overwhelming numbers." The representatives listened calmly. They had always known this day would come. Humanity had spent centuries hiding their true strength, waiting for the right moment to reveal what they could really do. That moment was now. "They still don't understand what they're fighting," Wu Jin continued. "They think we're just another primitive species with lucky technology. They don't realize that we're the children of Earth, the survivors of a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Our planet taught us that the strong don't just survive by being tough. They survive by being smart, by adapting, by working together when everything else wants to destroy them." The second alien fleet began moving toward Earth 2 weeks later. 10,000 ships from across the galaxy, carrying weapons that had destroyed entire civilizations. Planet killers that could shatter worlds, star destroyers that could make suns explode, reality bombs that could collapse dimensions and erase enemies from existence itself. The fleet was so large that it took 3 days just to pass through a single jump point. Ships stretched across space for millions of kilometers, a river of destruction flowing toward humanity's home. Every member species of the hegemony had contributed their most powerful vessels. This wasn't just an invasion force. It was a statement that no one could challenge their rule and survive. Admiral So Young waited for them at Neptune's orbit with humanity's newest ship, the New Soul. The vessel was the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that bent the laws of physics. It looked impressive, but even this massive ship seemed tiny compared to the alien armada approaching. The alien commander, Fleet Admiral Torx Annis, laughed when he saw the single human ship waiting for them. One ship? The humans send one ship to fight 10,000? Their arrogance will be their destruction. The battle began exactly as the aliens expected. Their weapons poured destruction onto the human ship, hitting it with enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. The New Soul's shields held for a few minutes, then began to fail. The great human ship started coming apart, pieces of hulls spinning away into space. Across the solar system, the aliens detected more human ships moving to intercept them. Defense fleets launching from Mars, combat groups emerging from the asteroid belt, reinforcements arriving from the outer planets. Hundreds of human vessels, all desperately trying to reach the battle before their flagship was destroyed. The aliens picked them off one by one. Human ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Entire defense fleets were wiped out by single alien weapons. Mars colony went silent as orbital bombardment turned the planet's surface into molten glass. Europa Station stopped transmitting when a reality bomb erased it from existence. For the first time since the war began, humanity appeared to be losing. Admiral Torx Annis watched the destruction with satisfaction. This was how wars were supposed to go. The strong crushed the weak. The advanced destroyed the primitive. The galactic hegemony had restored the natural order of the universe. Then Captain Hyun Jun of the research vessel Daegu Explorer transmitted a single message that changed everything. Phase 2 initiated. The alien celebration died as they realized the truth. The human ships they had been destroying weren't real. The Mars colony they had bombed was a holographic projection. Europa Station had been empty for months. Even the mighty New Soul was nothing more than an elaborate fake, designed to make the aliens think they were winning. While the alien fleet had been busy fighting ghosts, the real human forces had been doing something much more dangerous. They had been studying their enemies, learning how their weapons worked, discovering the weaknesses in their technology. More importantly, they had been spreading throughout the galaxy, infiltrating alien worlds, making contact with the species that the hegemony had conquered and enslaved. Dr. Yun-ji spoke from her laboratory on Luna's hidden side, her voice reaching every corner of the galaxy through quantum transmitters that the aliens couldn't detect or block. "Did you really think we would fight you the way you expected? We are the species that invented guerrilla warfare, deception, and psychological operations. We don't win by being stronger than our enemies. We win by being smarter." The truth hit. The alien fleet like a physical blow. They weren't fighting a desperate defense. They were walking into a trap that had been 3 centuries in the making, and now it was too late to escape. The revelation spread through the alien fleet like a virus. Ship after ship reported the same impossible truth. Everything they had been fighting was fake. The humans hadn't lost a single real vessel. The colonies they had destroyed were empty illusions. The desperate defense they had been crushing was nothing more than an elaborate puppet show designed to keep them busy while the real war began. Fleet Admiral Torx Anus stared at his tactical displays, watching as his intelligence officers confirmed what he didn't want to believe. The Mars colony that his ships had just turned into molten glass. Scans showed it had been abandoned for months, replaced with holographic projectors that made empty buildings look full of life. Europa Station, which they had erased from existence with a reality bomb? The station was real, but it had been evacuated. They had destroyed an empty shell. How long have they been preparing this deception? Torx Anus asked his science officer. The alien's multiple eyes blinked in confusion as he studied the data. Based on the complexity of the illusions, sir, centuries. They've been planning this since before we made first contact. While the alien fleet struggled to understand what was happening, Commander Jae-sung moved through the shadows of Nexus Prime itself. The hegemony's capital world was supposed to be the most secure location in the galaxy, protected by shields that could stop, planets and weapons that could destroy stars. But the aliens had made one crucial mistake. They had never considered that their enemies might already be inside. Jae-sung and his team had arrived months ago, not as invaders, but as refugees. They had used alien shuttle crashes to explain their presence, pretending to be survivors from some distant world that the hegemony had conquered long ago. The aliens were so used to ruling over enslaved species that they barely noticed a few more prisoners working in their factories and serving in their homes. Now those prisoners revealed their true nature. In a dozen locations across Nexus Prime, human operatives began transmitting signals that reached far beyond the capital world. They spoke in languages the aliens had forbidden, to species the hegemony had tried to destroy, carrying a message that would shake the galaxy to its foundation. On the world of Carrion, where the bird-like Vantari had been enslaved for 800 years. The message reached resistance cells that had been waiting for exactly this moment. The humans weren't just fighting the hegemony, they were offering to help everyone who wanted to be free. The Vantari leader, an ancient female named Skyweaver Nayla, had lived through the conquest of her world. She had watched her people's cities burn and their children taken to serve alien masters. Now she listened to the human message with wings that trembled with something she hadn't felt in centuries. Hope. My people, she broadcast to Vantari hidden across the galaxy. The humans have shown us that the hegemony can be defeated. They are not gods. They are not invincible. They are just bullies with big weapons, and bullies can be brought down. Similar messages reached the crystal-based Shalorians, who had been used as living computers for 600 years. The plant-like Verdani, whose entire species had been turned into biological factories. The energy beings called the Lumina, who had been imprisoned in power generators to fuel hegemony ships. On Earth, Major Seong Hwan stood in the command center that had been hidden beneath Seoul since humanity first reached for the stars. Around him, operators who looked like simple humans coordinated operations across thousands of worlds. They didn't just have superior technology. They had something the aliens couldn't understand. They genuinely wanted to help others be free. Activate the Liberation Protocol, Seong Hwan ordered. Show the galaxy what the hegemony really is. Quantum. Transmitters that had been hidden throughout alien space for decades suddenly came online. They broadcast on every frequency, in every language, showing the truth that the hegemony had tried to hide for over 1,000 years. Images of enslaved worlds, records of destroyed civilizations, evidence of genocide committed against species that had refused to surrender. The galaxy watched in horror as they learned how the glorious hegemony had really built their empire. Not through noble conquest or superior civilization, but through brutal oppression and systematic murder. Hundreds of species had been wiped out completely. Thousands more had been reduced to slavery. Entire star systems had been stripped bare to feed the appetites of the 12 ruling races. But the most powerful part of the broadcast wasn't the evidence of alien crimes. It was the footage of humanity's victories. The galaxy watched human ships appear from impossible dimensions. They saw human warriors survive in the vacuum of space. They witnessed weapons that could tear apart matter at the quantum level. More importantly, they saw that the invincible galactic hegemony could be beaten. The effect was immediate and devastating. On Nexus Prime, Vantari workers in the power plants suddenly stopped working and started singing ancient songs of freedom. Shalorian computers began shutting down hegemony systems instead of running them. Verdani biological factories started producing medicines for their own people instead of weapons for their masters. On the battlefront near Earth, Fleet Admiral Torxanis watched his empire crumble in real time. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Rebellion on Carrion, revolt on Shilor, revolution spreading from world to world like wildfire. His own crews were beginning to desert as species that had served the hegemony for centuries suddenly remembered what it felt like to want freedom. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving orders to return to home space immediately. There are uprisings on over 300 worlds. Command says we need every ship to maintain order." Torxanis stared at the tactical display showing his massive fleet. 10,000 ships, enough firepower to destroy entire civilizations, and he was being ordered to abandon his target to fight his own people. The humans had done more than win a battle. They had started a revolution. "What are your orders, sir?" his first officer asked. The alien commander looked at the display one more time, then at the empty space where he thought Earth's defenses had been. The humans were still out there somewhere, watching, waiting to see what he would do. He could continue the attack knowing that his empire was falling apart behind him, or he could retreat and try to save what was left of the hegemony's power. "Signal the fleet," Torxanis said finally. "All ships, prepare to return to home space. We're needed elsewhere." As the alien fleet began turning away from Earth, humanity achieved something that no weapon could accomplish. They had made their enemies choose between conquering Earth and saving their own empire. The aliens had chosen to save themselves, not knowing that it was already too late. From his hidden command post on Luna, Dr. Yunji watched the alien fleet retreat. But she knew the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The real battle wouldn't be fought in space with ships and weapons. It would be fought in the hearts and minds of every enslaved species in the galaxy, and humanity had just given them all the same gift, the knowledge that their chains could be broken. The galaxy would never be the same. The hegemony's 1,000-year reign was ending, brought down not by superior firepower, but by a simple idea that humans had carried with them from their home world, that every thinking being deserved to be free. The aliens had thought they could breach Earth's frontiers and add humanity to their list of conquered species. They had been wrong about that. But they had also been wrong about something much more important. They thought the war was about territory and resources and power. It wasn't. It was about freedom. And that was a war the hegemony could never win, because they had never understood what they were really fighting against. 6 months after the failed invasion of Earth, President Bo Young stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. The Great Hall of New Hope, formerly known as Nexus Prime, held representatives from over 800 species. Some had been free for centuries but never dared to challenge the hegemony. Others had just broken their chains weeks ago, still blinking in the unfamiliar light of liberty. The revolution had spread faster than anyone had expected. Within days of humanity's broadcast, entire sectors of the galaxy had risen up against their oppressors. The hegemony's response had been swift and brutal, but it was too late. Once people remembered what freedom felt like, no amount of force could make them forget again. Bo Young looked out at the assembled delegates, seeing species she had only read about in intelligence reports. The graceful Vantari with their rainbow wings. The crystalline Shilorians whose bodies reflected light in impossible patterns. The towering Goliathi who had been used as living construction equipment. The tiny whisperers whose telepathic abilities had been exploited to create a galaxy-wide communication network. All of them had something in common now. They were free. 6 months ago, Bo Young began, her voice carried to every corner of the hall by translation systems that the humans had, provided the galactic hegemony thought they could add one more species to their list of slaves. They looked at humanity and saw primitives who would be easy to conquer. They were wrong about that. But more importantly, they were wrong about what would happen if they tried. The applause that followed came from hundreds of different species, creating a sound unlike anything heard before in the galaxy. Each race clapped or whistled or sang in their own way, but the meaning was universal: gratitude. Captain Dae-hyun commanded one of the humanitarian fleets that had been spreading across former hegemony space. His ship, the Busan Hope, carried not weapons but medicine, food, and technology to worlds that had been stripped bare by their former masters. It was dangerous work. Some former hegemony species were fighting to maintain their power, turning entire star systems into war zones rather than accept that their empire was over. But the humans kept coming, not as conquerors, but as helpers. On the world of Verdani Prime, Dae-hyun walked through forests that had been turned into biological factories by the hegemony. The plant-like Verdani had been forced to grow weapons and armor instead of food and shelter. Now, with human help, they were learning to heal their poisoned soil and grow things that would help their people instead of hurting others. "Why do you help us?" asked Sunblossom.